Your destiny. This is incredible. You will be involved in a great battle. An awesome conflict between the forces of good and evil. A battle whose outcome will determine the fate of the whole world.
Yeah, I knew that already. But did it say anything about a girl?
Wintersheart is book 9 in the Wheel of Time. Anyway, for my spoiler-free sections for this, I kind of want to talk about this phase of the Wheel of Time. Now, I wasn't aware of this, but apparently I'm in this phase called the Slog. By the way, I just want to say, when it comes to the Wheel of Time, when I picked up the Eye of the World, all I knew was that this is a really long fantasy series. I was aware of what the Wheel of Time was ages ago, before I even picked up a single Brandon Sanderson book, before I even heard of the Cosmere. I knew what the Wheel of Time was. Wheel of Time was something that was talked about in the same vein as like a Discworld or Lord of the Rings, where it's one of those staple fantasy series, but I never got around to reading it because it's a really long series, right? And so all I knew about the Wheel of Time coming into it was that this is a big influence for Brandon Sanderson. It's really long. I knew a couple of names of some characters like Moraine and Rand. But otherwise, I knew little to nothing. I knew there was a adaptation coming out this year. I only just found out like a couple of months ago that Rosamund Pike is playing Moraine. So you could tell I'm living under a rock, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So I wasn't aware that I'm in this phase right now called the Slog until just recently. Right now I've read up to book 10, I think. And honestly, from what I gather of the word slog, it means it's probably really slow and not good. I actually really like this phase of the Wheel of Time. The Path of Daggers was a misstep. Not because of the events that happened in the Path of Daggers. I like what happened in the Path of Daggers. It's the way it was written. The individual chapters dragged out, storylines dragged out. It's a book that could fit like a couple hundred pages that just so clearly felt like it was just being prolonged and elongated to fit a full-size novel. I don't have that issue with Winter's Heart. I enjoy Winter's Heart. Winter's Heart is a good book. Even though it's technically part of this slog, I can understand why people call this phase of the Wheel of Time the slog, because the overarching story is moving at a kind of a trudging pace. Right now, everything feels a bit stagnant, right? It's like there's this progress bar and it's like jubbling. While reading Winter's Heart, I wouldn't say that I read a chapter and I was like, I'm bored. This is boring. What are we doing here? Yes, storylines are barely progressing, but I kind of just enjoy hanging out with these characters. I enjoy this political maneuvering that's happening here. Characters like Elaine, Matt, and Rand, and all the shenanigans they get with, whether it's got to do with the supernatural aspects and the wider conflict, or whether it's political maneuverings. I enjoy that stuff. I generally enjoy it. I think it adds a lot to their characters. It's slow, but it's a good kind of slow that I enjoy reading. I enjoy reading Winter's Heart. And that's kind of what I want to say for my spoiler-free review. It's not like top-tier Wheel of Time. I would say this is pretty good, solid stuff, and I enjoyed Winter's Heart. Let's get into spoilers. So the characters this book chooses to focus on is Rand, Matt, Perrin, Elaine, and an assortment of other POVs, like interlude chapters, I'd say. But the four main one is Rand, Matt, Perrin, and Elaine. So the first one I want to get through quite quickly is Perrin. So at the end of Path of Daggers, it sets up a really interesting storyline with Perrin. So Phil and Morghese and a bunch of other people have been kidnapped by the Shaido Aiel. They're being held as Gaishan prisoners in the Shaido camp, And it's kind of a rescue mission right now. That's set up in the Path of Daggers. In Winter's Heart, we get some perspectives on Phil's side and Perrin's side. Now, with Perrin's side of stuff, what I liked about this is the sense of loss that Perrin feels. I truly get the impression that Phil has been gone for a long time. I completely feel Perrin's yearning for her. I understand how stressed he is and how much this is affecting his image. You know, he's not concerned about governing this army that he has to lead, and he's not concerned about his personal hygiene and stuff. He's just so focused and constantly stressed about Phil, and I appreciate that internal struggle within himself that emotional struggle. That aspects I really like. What I also like is Fail's perspectives. I love seeing the other side of this conflict. Seeing her as a Gaishan going through this really torturous path. She's like walking around nude, like walking through the snow. Her feet are bleeding. It's really gruesome, bloody, but it doesn't play it out like, let's say, a Gwen in The Great Hunt, where you're meant to feel sympathy. A Gwen doesn't know what to do, and she's just broken. Vale's kind of a warrior, and her doing her best to survive as long as possible in order to wait out, help, or plan an escape is so in tune with this character, and it's so different from what we've seen in before that I really appreciate the different direction Jordan is going on here. It doesn't feel like a repeat of storylines we've seen before. However, we don't get much of Fail here. I would have preferred much more Fail to balance things out, because for the most part, Perrin's storyline, it doesn't move much. I understand that the effect here is to really spread out the amount of time to get the impression of how long it's been and how little they've progressed further. I get that impression, but in terms of the narrative, it doesn't work because it's slow and the parent storyline is moving at a trudging pace to the point where I could confidently say that most of his storyline in this book could have been cut out because it doesn't really lead to anything and it doesn't really go anywhere. A perspective I really did enjoy is Elaine here. So Elaine is back in Andor and she's taking up the position as daughter heir. She's not quite queen of Andor yet because it's been such a long time. There are different nobles who believe they are more suited for the position because they don't want a Trakan on the throne again because of all the history that's happened, right? And so she has to deal with that. She has to deal with the noble houses. She has to fulfill her duty as an Aes Sedai of the Green Arja and daughter heir. Seeing her balance all these different positions and all these different duties is really just kind of overwhelming. What I really love is that now that our characters are in positions of leadership, they are so overwhelmed with everything they have to do. They have so many duties to different peoples. For example, Elaine has promises to keep with the Afamir, and they're like constantly demanding stuff, right? And then she also has to sort out this borderlanders that are laying siege outside of Camlin. There's so much going on. Even though most of it is just dialogue, political maneuvering, there's a lot going on and it's really interesting and I love seeing that. In terms of the personal stuff in Elaine's storyline here, in the prologue chapter, we get this kind of ritual with her becoming first sisters with Avienda. It's quite a strange cerebral kind of ritual that's going on here that's meant to recreate childbirth. It's kind of strange but also slightly beautiful, and I really enjoyed that whole chapter. I love how weird Jordan gets. It's so weird and cerebral, and I kind of love that. And I'm down for Avienda and Elaine becoming first sisters. It's a concept. Out of all the things within this love rectangle, this is a development that I don't mind because I really like these two characters, especially Elaine in this book. I think she grows as a lot as a character in this book. Another development we get in here, it's quite a big deal, is that Elaine bonds Rand. Rand is already bonded to Alana, but she creates a weave to make herself, Avienda, and Min become bond Rand, almost like a warder bond, right? And this is all fine, but it brings up some logistical issues. When I was reading it, I was like, hold up. Let me just paint it out for you. Rand is currently dealing with sharing his mind with Lews Therin. So he's got this psychological battle with Lews Therin. He's bonded with Alana. He's bonded with Elaine. He's bonded with Min. He's bonded with Avienda. And in this book, we are constantly told that he has a connection with Mat and Perrin as well. And not to mention that Alana already is bonded to another warder, and Elaine is also bonded to Burgett. So it's this complicated web, and like most of everyone is just connected to Rand. And I'm just thinking to myself, of course this guy is going to turn mad. Look how many people are within his mind. Of course he's got to go mad. Of course, I do not blame Rand for eventually breaking the world. Like, dude, I completely understand. If you have to deal with this, I get it. Like, seriously, it's kind of ridiculous how many people are psychologically linked with Rand. I don't know if this is done on purpose, but more people need to talk about how many people are psychologically linked with Rand. I'm sorry if my audio was really bad. I forgot to take off the cushion. So Matt returns in this book, and we get a lot of Matt in here. Also, something I want to talk about in terms of his storyline is an interlude chapter we get is of Tuan, and Tuan is supposed to be one of the blood in terms of the Xingqiang Empire. We get this amazing chapter that clearly, in just one chapter, you completely understand who Tuan is. She's kind of ruthless. Obviously, she's a high blood person of royalty within the Xingqiang, right? She's a leader, and the Xingqiang aren't good people. They're this ruthless empire. You get the sense that she's also ruthless, but she's empathetic, and she's layered, and she's ruthless, and you instantly get an idea of who she is. And then obviously there's a stinger at the end. Tuan is the daughter of the Nine Moons, which is like a huge revelation. We've heard this name mentioned so many times. We've had it mentioned associated with the Xingqiang before, so I wasn't surprised about this. But I was surprised about how big of a deal the daughter of the Nine Moon is, because essentially she's like one of the highest positions within the Xingqiang Empire, right? And the Xingqiang are a huge force to be reckoned with. They are essentially the lineage of Arthur Hawkwing's empire, and they're here to reclaim the land that's rightfully theirs. Obviously, we heard so much about Arthur Hawkwing and his conquest to claim all the lands within this world, and Tuan specifically, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she is the direct descendant of Arthur Hawkwing himself, which is quite a big deal. And she's come into the fold of things, and she's come into Ebudar, where Matt is situated right now. And obviously, we know that Matt's prophecy is closely associated with the daughter of the Nine Moons. So this creates for some interesting moments and some interesting moments of tension. I've got to say, I think Matt might be the most engaging perspective to read so far. It's a perspective, a lot happens with Matt. I will say that a lot happens with Matt in this book, and even if it doesn't, even if it's Matt just hanging around, he'd still be the most fun perspective to read. I have a lot of fun reading Matt. The cast of side characters he has with him is so much fun. I love his odd sexual relationship with Queen Tylin. It's hilarious. It's still funny for me. I love Queen Tylin. So having the Xingqiang within Altara, and specifically Ebudar, completely shifts the political sphere within Ebudar. So all the dynamics within the Tarasin Palace have completely changed. Tylin is no longer in a position of authority. She's kind of submissive to the Xingqiang, even though she is still has the placeholder name as Queen of Ebudar, right? Only in name, though. The Xingqiang still occupy Ebudar, and they still control it, and she has to listen to them. And with Matt, we get the reluctant hero in him. Obviously, all the Aes Sedai, because this is a Xingqiang occupied land, all the Aes Sedai have been made into domain. And this really conflicts with Matt's personal morals. You know, he knows this is wrong, and he wants to do something about this. He owes something to these Aes Sedai, specifically Aes Sedai like Teslin, right? And seeing this almost escape story, this prison break kind of storyline with Matt breaking out some of the domain, some of the Aes Sedai free of the Tarasin Palace was awesome. Seeing the planning for all of this is kind of like a heist mission vibes over here. And then the conflict at the end with, obviously he's trying to escape with the Aes Sedai, and then Tuan and her maid confront him. And I thought, oh, okay, so he doesn't know this is the daughter of the Nine Moons, and eventually to kind of keep stuff quiet, he's probably got to kidnap her or something to settle everything down. Otherwise, she's got to order guards to like kill him or something. But no, Tuan, the badass that she is, like starts freaking taijutsu karate chopping him. And I'm like, this woman is awesome. I love Tuan, despite the fact that she is currently the heir to an evil empire that human traffics and is involved in enslavement. I do not support that, but I love Tuan. Matt's storyline, it just sets up some interesting stuff for the future. I'm so excited for what his story has to hold, and I love his dynamics. His dynamics with all of these characters are amazing, especially his new dynamic with Tuan. Cannot wait to explore this further. So Rand is currently traveling with Min. After he makes like a quick pit stop in Andor and knocks up Elaine, he goes into his main storyline, which is to cleanse Sidon. So he needs to enlist the help of Nynaeve, because Nynaeve's a powerful Aes Sedai, and she's probably the one person he can trust to do this. So they have that two Sa'ang Reals, those really powerful Sa'ang Reals, that's powerful enough to cleanse Sidon. He needs both the female half of the source and the male half of the source to be part of this ritual. And a part of his storyline is that he's kind of hunting for Ashan Man in Far Madding. I really like the setting of Far Madding. There's this island. In this island of Far Madding, there's this huge Angrials that completely block out the one power, so you can't use it. It makes things a lot more difficult when it comes to hunting the Ashan Man. Rand has to use his basic skills, but he cannot rely on Sidon anymore. He has to use his basic sword fighting skills, and that made for an interesting conflict within this book. We got like tailing missions, stealth missions. It's very video game-esque when he's hunting the Ashan Man, which I really dig. We also get Karusan, the rebel Aes Sedai in Far Madding, and they cross paths with Rand. I really love this undefined relationship between Rand and Karusan, because Rand knows that he can't do this by himself, but he's got too much arrogance within him to admit it. And Karusan is also a little bit like arrogant as well. She doesn't want to seem like she's in desperate need to help Rand. I think Karusan really works well within this book, and especially within Rand's narrative. First, and I just want to jump to the climax of this book. This is a really great climax. I love climaxes that are so unique and different to what we got before. This is one of the better ones, along there with Demai as well. So what the climax is Rand and Nynaeve cleansing Sidon. It's this ritual, and it's this insane ritual. So much of the power is being used that every single person who can channel across the world is sensing this, no matter where they are. And while this ritual is going on, obviously the Forsaken are coming to play. We're getting different perspectives of all the different Forsaken who are at this point. All the rebel Aes Sedai must essentially protect Rand and Nynaeve from all the threats that are attacking them. And this conflict is mostly about everyone else other than Nynaeve and Rand, which I really love the way Jordan wrote this. He made the creative decision to focus most of the POV sections of this conflict on the other characters. The conflict is protecting Nynaeve and Rand from other threats. And that's what makes this so unique. I love this climax. It's such a good climax. It was so epic. Where my biggest issue lies is that there are so many storylines, especially when it comes to all the side players. We're getting so many interlude chapters of characters like Aleda, some of the Black Arja, some of the Forsaken. And all of this is great stuff. But I feel like there's so much emphasis being placed on them. The chapters are a bit too long for characters who aren't even main characters. Even important characters like Egenin, we get some POV chapters with her, and that's important because the storylines has some crossover with Mat. These are all essential stuff, and the ones that are essential, like Egenin's, is great chapters. I really enjoy reading them. But then, for every time we get that, we also get some chapters with characters like Bethamin and Hareen. And I'm like, there's too much. This is fine, but we really need to push further with all the other main character storylines. And I feel like there's just too much emphasis being placed on all these other side players. Their sections and stories could have been cut shorter. And I think, especially in this point in the series, we need to see more of the main storylines push further rather than adding onto all the other side storylines and expanding them further and growing. And I'm like, we need to cut back down a bit now and start seeing more catharsis and seeing more converging of storylines. And I mostly complain about all the other side perspectives, all the other interlude POVs, because a lot of them felt like could have been cut shorter. They're important, don't get me wrong, but they could have been cut shorter and we could have seen a bit more resolutions of some of these storylines like Aleda and the Black Arja. Overall, I enjoyed Wintersheart. I really enjoyed Wintersheart. It's much better than Path of Daggers. Path of Daggers was written weirdly, especially after reading Wintersheart. There's something off about Path of Daggers. I know some people may not like my review for Path of Daggers. I haven't uploaded it yet, so I don't know what the opinions are. But something was off about Path of Daggers. This is a much better, even though a lot of the storylines, big or small, kind of feel a bit stagnant right now. For example, Perrin's one, especially. However, like I said, I enjoy hanging out with these characters. I enjoy the political maneuverings and whatnot. I enjoy this phase of the Wheel of Time. I'm gonna give this a 7.5. That's a really good score, I think. I couldn't give it higher because it doesn't do much to push the story further, and there are some pacing issues with certain storylines. But overall, I had a good time with this book. Wintersheart was great. Anyway, guys, tell me in the comment section below what you thought. If you have read the Wheel of Time, please use spoiler-free comments because I and a lot of other people are going through the series for the first time. Anyway guys, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.